One man left his parents a note saying he was about to board an alien spaceship, then drove into a storm and never came home. Another walked out to go shopping, disappeared for days, and was found on top of a coal pile with his shirt, wallet, and watch missing. These are not clean UFO stories. They are stranger than that. They are human disappearances with enough physical evidence to keep them grounded and enough unanswered detail to let the alien explanation crawl in through the cracks. The first case begins on Vancouver Island with a quiet mechanical genius who could rebuild machines most people could barely understand, and a note that turned his disappearance into folklore. Before anyone argued about aliens, Granger Taylor was known for machines. That matters because the weirdest part of his story only works if you understand what people saw when they looked at him. They did not see a man who talked big and never built anything. They saw someone who could take wreckage, scrap, old engines, abandoned equipment, and turn it back into motion. He grew up near Duncan, British Columbia, on Vancouver Island. He left school young, but he did not stop learning. He learned through grease, metal, broken parts, and stubborn patience. According to the reporting that survived around his case, he restored a one-cylinder car as a teenager. He overhauled a bulldozer. He helped bring an old steam locomotive back from the edge of ruin. Later, he restored a World War II P-40 Kitty Hawk, the kind of project that would defeat plenty of trained mechanics. That is the first thing the story has to hold on to. Granger was not only a dreamer, he was a builder. If he became obsessed with an idea, the idea did not stay in his head. It became an object in the yard. By the late 1970s, the object was a homemade spacecraft. Not a toy, not a poster on a wall, a real structure, built on his parents' property from parts he gathered and shaped. Vice reported that author Douglas Curran saw the craft before it disappeared from the farm and described it as being made from 2 satellite receiving dishes, with a couch, a television, and a wood-burning stove inside. Granger spent hours there. Sometimes he slept there. That detail changes the tone of the case. It was not just a man saying he wanted to leave Earth. It was a man building a place where he could rehearse the idea. A little room of metal and heat and static light, sitting in the rain on a family property, part workshop and part waiting room. People close to him described him as quiet, shy, and different. A friend, Robert Keller, told Vice that Granger was like a mentor to him. Keller also said Granger believed he was receiving communications from beings somewhere else. Another friend recalled that Granger talked about contact in a matter-of-fact way, like he was describing work he intended to finish. That is where the story becomes hard to flatten into one explanation. If you only call him delusional, you lose the intelligence everyone around him kept describing. If you only call him a genius, you miss the dangerous intensity of the belief. The cultural weather around him also mattered. This was after years of public UFO obsession, sightings, abduction claims, science fiction films, people looking at the sky and wondering whether government explanations were enough. Granger lived inside that atmosphere, but in his case, the atmosphere had tools on it. He did not just watch movies about contact. He built a craft in the yard and tried to understand how a flying saucer might work. Then came November 29, 1980. That evening, Granger left a note for his parents. The important part was short and devastating. He wrote that he had gone to board an alien spaceship and that recurring dreams had promised a 42-month interstellar voyage. He said he was leaving his possessions behind because he would no longer need them. The note is the center of the case because it is not rumor. It is the surviving doorway into his state of mind. Vice also reported that in his will, Granger crossed out the word death and replaced it with departure. Local reporting described a map or drawing on the back of the note, though its meaning was never settled. Those are not atmospheric details. They are the reason the story still sticks. He did not only vanish. He framed the vanishing as travel. The timeline after that is blunt. He was reportedly last seen at Bob's Grill around 6:30 in the evening. He left in his bright pink Datsun truck. A storm moved through the area that night. Police searched. Family and friends searched. They did not find Granger, and they did not find the truck. That missing truck matters almost as much as the note. A person can walk into woods. A person can hide. A person can leave under a false name. But a bright pink truck is a loud thing to erase. One RCMP officer told local press that you would expect the vehicle to turn up somewhere. It did not. For years, the absence of the truck kept the alien version alive because the ordinary version had a hole the size of a vehicle in it. There were grounded warning signs, too. Vice reported that family members believed Granger had been using acid heavily in the months before he disappeared. Friends and relatives also remembered his talk about mental communication, dreams, and leaving soon. None of that proves what happened, but it changes the kind of tragedy this might be. It suggests a brilliant, lonely, possibly unstable man moving closer and closer to an idea until the idea became an appointment. Still, the easy answer is not fully easy. Granger knew machinery. He knew explosives. Friends said he had used dynamite for stump removal. That becomes important because in 1986, almost 6 years later, forestry workers found a blast site near Mount Prevost, not far from his parents' home. Reports said human bone fragments were found there. They also said pieces connected to Granger's truck were found. The coroner treated the circumstantial evidence as enough to conclude that Granger had died in an explosion. That finding gives the case its likely ending. It does not give it a clean, emotional ending. If he died in an explosion, was it deliberate? Was it an accident? Was he trying to disappear? Was he acting out the journey he had written down? Did he believe, in that final stretch of road and rain, that he was not driving toward death, but toward departure? This is why the alien angle survives even when the grounded evidence points to something much more human. It survives because Granger designed the language of his own disappearance. He did not leave a confession, he left a launch notice. He turned his will into a departure document. He built a spacecraft you could stand inside, then vanished with the only vehicle that could carry him away from home. The better story is not that aliens definitely took Granger Taylor. The better story is that a real man built an entire myth around the possibility of being taken. Then, on one stormy night, he stepped into that myth so completely that the people who loved him were left trying to decide whether he had died, escaped, or somehow done exactly what he said. And that is the part that makes the case sadder than a UFO legend. Every wild theory still has to pass through the same ordinary doorway. Parents finding a note, friends remembering the last conversations, a bright truck gone from the road, and a homemade spacecraft sitting behind as the strangest empty room in British Columbia. The second case is colder, because Zigmund Adamski did not leave a note, did not announce a journey, and did not seem to be chasing the sky at all. Zigmund Adamski was a coal miner, not a UFO witness. That is the first thing to keep clear. He was born in Poland, came to Britain after the Second World War, settled in West Yorkshire, married his wife Lottie, and worked at Lofthouse Colliery. His life, from the outside, looked built around routine. Work, home, errands. The kind of life where being late is noticed because being late is not normal. On June 6, 1980, Adamski left his home in Tingley to go shopping. He was 56 years old. He did not return that evening. His wife reported him missing. Police and family began searching. The first version of the mystery was simple and frightening. A reliable man had walked out for an ordinary errand and vanished. The second version arrived days later in Todmorden, about 20 miles away. Accounts differ in some retellings on the exact discovery date, but the core of the case is consistent. Adamski was found dead on top of a roughly 10-foot-high pile of coal at a coal yard. That image is the reason the story never feels normal. A missing miner does not simply appear on top of a coal heap miles from home without leaving a trail of questions behind. The body created more questions than it answered. He was wearing a suit jacket and trousers, but no shirt. His watch was missing. His wallet was missing. Those items were not recovered. Reports describe his hair as roughly cut. They also describe only about 1 day's growth of beard, even though he had been missing for several days. That single detail turns the 5 missing days into a room with no windows. If the beard detail is accurate, where had he been? Who had kept him there? Why did he reappear only at the end? Then there were the burns. Sky History and Discovery UK both describe marks on his head, neck, and shoulders. The coroner, James Turnbull, reportedly said some burns appeared to have been treated with an ointment forensic scientists could not identify. Discovery's account also notes that the coroner concluded Adamski died after a heart attack, while leaving the larger question unanswered. Where had he been before he died, and what led him there? This is the point where a case becomes vulnerable to every theory. Foul play fits some details and fails others. If someone abducted him, why no ransom? Why move him 20 miles? Why place him somewhere so visible and so strange? If it was an accident, how does an injured man with missing clothing get to the top of the coal pile? If the burns came from a natural event, why the missing wallet and watch? Why the rough haircut? Why the ointment? The coal pile is important because it is not just dramatic scenery. It is a logistical problem. Coal is dirty, unstable, and heavy. Climbing it in a weakened state would not be simple. Being placed there would require someone to move a body into an exposed industrial yard. Either version has weight. Either version asks for people, vehicles, timing, and risk. A good explanation has to carry all of that, not just name a theory. One of the first officers tied to the discovery was P.C. Alan Godfrey. At that moment, he was part of a death investigation. Months later, he became the reason Adamski's case entered UFO folklore. In November 1980, Godfrey was sent out early in the morning to look into a report of escaped cattle. According to his later account, he saw a bright, diamond-shaped object over the road. He said his police radio would not work. He said the object disappeared in a flash. He then found himself farther down the road, with time missing from his watch. Sky History reports details from his account, including a split boot, a mark on his foot, a dry patch of road after rain, and the missing cattle suddenly visible nearby. Later, under hypnosis, Godfrey described a more elaborate encounter involving a strange room and beings inside it. That part of the story is much harder to treat as evidence. Hypnosis is not a reliable truth machine. Memories can be shaped. Claims can grow. But even if someone rejects the hypnosis completely, the public damage to Godfrey was real. Sky History reports that he was mocked, transferred, and lived with the consequences of being known as a policeman who claimed to have seen a UFO. The link between Godfrey and Adamski is where the story becomes dangerous if it is told badly. Adamski did not vanish because Godfrey later saw something. Godfrey's later claim does not prove aliens killed a miner. The connection is more subtle, and honestly, more unsettling. The same town, the same officer, the same year, 2 stories that should not belong together, and both orbiting around missing time, strange physical traces, and an official record that did not close the door. That is why Adamski's case works better as a human mystery with a UFO shadow than as an alien abduction story. The alien theory became attractive because ordinary theories could not comfortably explain the body. But the ordinary possibilities are grim enough. Kidnapping, assault, panic, medical crisis, industrial accident, or some combination that erase the crucial days before death. The paranormal version does not replace those possibilities. It grows in the space they leave behind. There is also a sad fairness owed to Adamski himself. The most famous version of his story often turns him into a prop in someone else's UFO encounter. But before the coal pile, before Todmorden became a headline, he was a husband who went shopping and did not come home. The case is frightening because of the missing days, but it is painful because those days belong to a real person. So the strongest question is not, was he taken by aliens? The stronger question is simpler. What happened to Zigmund Adamski between the moment he left Tingley and the moment his body appeared in Todmorden? Who saw him? Who handled his clothes? Who cut his hair? Who treated the burns, if that is what the ointment was? And why did the final scene look arranged in a way that still feels wrong? When you strip the case down, the alien theory is not the foundation. The foundation is the coal pile, the missing items, the burns, the beard growth, the distance from home, and a coroner unable to answer the route between disappearance and death. Everything else is weather around that center. But weather can change how people remember a place. After Godfrey's account, Todmorden became part of Britain's UFO map. The hills, roads, rain, cattle call, dead radio, and diamond-shaped craft all fused with Adamski's death until separating them became almost impossible. That fusion is the real folklore. One unexplained death becomes the backstory for another unexplained event, and together they make a town feel like a door was left open. There may be a rational answer. There may be a cruel answer. There may be a mundane answer hidden by bad records, missed sightings, and the erosion of time. But until the missing days can be filled in, Zigmund Adamski remains suspended between two kinds of fear. The fear of what people can do to each other, and the older fear that something else can enter an ordinary morning and carry a person out of his life. Granger Taylor and Zigmund Adamski are easy to turn into alien folklore, but the real pool is the evidence that will not sit still. A note, a truck, a blast site, a coal pile, missing clothes, unexplained marks, and families left with questions instead of endings. Subscribe for more strange case files, paranormal mysteries, and evidence for